Hi, my name is Jaden Greenfield.
I'm Georgia Horan.
Zane's Unknown.
Henry Kester.
Amelie Soto.
This is our podcast on the novel The Man with the Compound Eyes by Wu Ming-Yi.
Okay, I'll give a quick summary of the novel. The Man with the Compound Eyes by Wu Ming-Yi is an ecological novel that weaves together myth, grief, and environmental crisis. It follows Alice Shi, a grieving Taiwanese professor who lost her family, and Atalai, a boy from the island of Weo Weo who is cast to sea as a ritual sacrifice but ends up on a floating island of trash, which is based on real-life phenomenon, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. When Away from the Garbage Island collides with Taiwan, destroying Alice's home, she rescues Atalai. Becoming friends, they exchange both language and culture. Blending magical realism and indigenous lore, the novel explores human connection and humanity's impact on nature.
My personal favorite part of the novel, I completely enjoyed reading the entire thing. I thought that it was so captivating and so interesting, and I ended up flipping back to so many different parts. And so when Alice is talking about her son Toto, throughout the novel we don't really know where Toto is, if he's real or not. When Dahu finds the body of Thomas, he doesn't mention Toto, and so it's kind of this big question throughout the novel. And towards the end, when the Man with the Compound Eye and Thomas are speaking, he says, while Thomas is having his realization about life and talking about what it means to be dead and how he can't really control his body, the Man with the Compound Eye says, "Your wife's writing kept your son alive. You remember that summer, the snake, the afternoon, you lost the life you born and raised." So once I read that, I went back and flipped back to page 77, where Alice was talking about this moment where Toto got bitten by a snake, and unknowingly to us, this is the moment that he died. So the quote is, "Alice would never forget an accident Toto had in grade 2. He got bitten by a snake one day while playing in the bushes. Not knowing what kind of snake it was, they took Toto to several hospitals to inject him with various antidotes, none of them at all effective. Toto was in a coma for nearly a week. Alice prayed with all her might to the gods she'd ever heard of until finally he woke up. She sometimes felt like Toto had really died that time." And personally, that was just a part where I felt like the entire book made sense to me and everything was interconnected, and I finally kind of had that aha moment. So it was so much fun to go back and read that quote with all of my prior knowledge now, and it kind of made this book even more interesting as I was going back and finding new parts.
Yeah, I also really like those chapters at the end of the book where it kind of pulled everything together. I particularly liked the chapter that is from a not real Toto's perspective on his dad going missing. It's just a really interesting way to start that, revelation that he's not real.
When you're talking about that, I know there's two parts of once Thomas leaves and he has that whole interaction with the Man with the Compound Eyes, there's a part where it's Toto, which we now know is a fake Toto, standing there and waiting for his dad for a couple days, and then talks to the Man with the Compound Eyes and asks where his dad is, and the man says nothing, kind of just nudges to the edge of the cliff, which shows his dad jumped off the cliff or fell off the cliff. And then there's the other part where he ends up climbing down the cliff and then climbing back up and reaching a new higher height, and it just ends there, he almost ascends to nature. What did you guys think about that?
I thought those were really interesting chapters, particularly because the first one happens before we know Toto isn't real. So I think it's from the perspective of this kid that is going to die, because his dad just fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
But there's also the mystical element of the Man with the Compound Eyes, who is this guy? They're not helping him.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one is after his dad has died, and we have the realization of Toto isn't real. So it's is this his spirit? It's really confusing.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was Toto's spirit, because when he was climbing down the cliff and then climbing back up, there was a quote that said his body all of a sudden felt lighter, and I thought that was a realization that maybe he was dead, so he was not really bound anymore, so he kind of did become more of a spirit figure. Or the other perspective where he looked down on his father at the bottom of the cliff and he realized he was dead, then he was also able to move on. So I took that as spirit ascending.
I was thinking about it as if, so both Alice and Thomas kind of thought that Toto was alive because of Alice's writing, and they both had created this traumatic memory of each of them. But when they were together, the memory could be the same because they both had each other to rely on and speak about it. And in this moment when they're both apart, I was thinking the book is pretty much talking about Alice for a majority of the time. And so originally when we don't know that Toto's dead and it's just saying he's waiting for his dad, I feel that would be Alice's perspective of what her son would do, wait for his dad and sit there and kind of do what he's supposed to. And then once we know that he is dead and we kind of know more about Thomas, we know that he's really impulsive and he's also like a huge climber. And so I feel like when he's thinking about his son and what his son would do, he would climb the cliff and then climb and reach like an insanely new height. And it's kind of showing that although he's dead, both of their memories are keeping him alive in different routes because they're separated.
Second Toto chapter happens in tandem with Tom dying, because he makes the decision to climb back up the cliff, and that's when his spirit like almost ascends.
Yeah.
So Tom dies, and then that like loses some of the belief that was keeping him there almost.
Yeah, maybe like the moment that he dies is the moment that, as you were saying, like his spirit, like the weight lifts up his body.
Okay, so my favorite part was about page 165 to 171 when Adlai was talking about the founding of his island and his people, which were originally sea people, but they angered the gods by being too greedy what was like given to them, and they were like permanently bound to this island, Weo. And that really led up to where the point in the book starts, where Adlai ended up on the trash island in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
So just a little bit of background for this trash vortex, the mythical one throughout the story, I guess, and then the real life one. There is a trash vortex within the novel that is fictional. It's a symbolic vortex that the author, Wu Mingyi, uses to illustrate and highlight the environmental distress caused by the destructive human tendencies of consumerism and waste. In the novel, this vortex physically washes ashore the east coast of Taiwan. In the early pages of the book, the trash vortex was painted as an, in quote, safe haven for Adlai. However, once washed ashore, it represents the true environmental distress the world is going through. Contradictorily, the real-world trash vortex is a scientifically documented colossal collection of garbage in the Pacific Ocean that has been formed by ocean currents. This garbage patch is not a solid island, but rather a dispersed, in quote, plastic soup containing extensive amounts of marine debris. The largest contributing material would be microplastics. These are small plastic particles that have broken down size due to the UV radiation. There are actually 5 major garbage patches today. However, the one we most commonly think of is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is located between Hawaii and California, and it has an astonishing 620,000 square miles of space that it takes up, which is actually twice the size of Texas.
That's insane.
Yeah, no, it's there. I was like looking at it and it was showing pictures of it. No, we are disgusting human beings for creating that much trash. And to think in the book he like made a house out of it. He didn't even know what the trash was. He just started making a house out of it.
Well, I also did research on the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and it said that in real life you can't actually like step on it.
No.
So it's like soup. That's why
Exactly,
it's so hard
that's
to
why
get
they
it
call
out.
it soup. And the
Yeah.
way he described like was trying to kill some sort of sea creature, and it like pulled him under, and he got stuck underneath the patch as like implying it was like a solid block of something.
Yeah, which imagine.
And it's not like that at all. It's literally like you step in and you sink. There's nothing holding it together. But basically, both the fictional and the non-fictional trash vortex clearly illustrates an ongoing damaging problem of waste production, consumerism, and the lack of environmental awareness within society. While the real-world vortex has not washed ashore and forced people to deal with its immediate problems, it is still something that society should be pushing solutions for. Prevention has been deemed by scientists the most long-term solution. This means limiting the amount of plastic that is originally entering the ocean. There's also several environmental groups and companies that work to clean the ocean. However, with the vast size of this patch, it's extremely difficult.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of sad, honestly, when he didn't know what any of the trash was.
Not at all. He just started picking up pieces
Yeah.
and was like, oh, this will make a roof.
Very resourceful out of things that are just like absolutely horrible. And I think it just like it plays into the point that like real indigenous populations in Asia play a huge role in conserving the environment and the ecosystem because of their beliefs about that. And like
It's like they find beauty in everything. Like
Yeah.
he found some sort of use and some sort of beauty. He was living on a pile of garbage.
Right.
And he was like, this is my home now. I'm happy to still be alive.
yeah, exactly.
I thought it was really interesting how he looked at the pieces of trash, but like saw the same aspects that make them so terrible also make them great for every purpose he needed for them.
Right.
Because plastic is so hard to break down, it made the perfect thing to build a house out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking into there's 6 countries that produce the most trash into like that patch, and it's China, Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. And so I was looking into like what is happening about this because there are 5 of those major trash vortexes, and it said that China is reducing plastic pollution within its own borders through plastic import bans and promoting waste sorting. And so there's like internal efforts that are going to decrease the amount of plastic. But as we've been talking about in class, there's a bunch of expansion with the Belt and Road Initiative. And because of the industrial activity, there's going to be a lot of plastic output increasing, and there's illegal waste dumping and like lost cargo and ocean traffic. And so although there are some, I guess, systems to monitor their plastic, it looks like all of these drafts are going near the rivers in Southeast and East Asia, where all of these other countries are major contributors, and so the plastic is just going to grow.
So it's kind of has to be a unified act. Just if one country stops, it doesn't mean it's going to make this huge difference. But in order for every country to stop, you have to have one that starts it.
Yeah.
It's just a fundamentally extremely difficult issue to solve. Because even if you're doing good at like sorting it into landfills, that stuff still does tend to end up eventually in the ocean.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of made, like, Alice, the trash vortex washed on shore. It became a problem, like, for the people on the land. I feel like it doesn't seem like it's as big of a problem, even though it quite literally is a very large problem. But it doesn't seem that way because we're not looking at it every day. It's not impacting where we go, where we live, the smells we smell every single day. But because it washed ashore, it became an immediate problem. It was a reality check.
Yeah, so those are all really good points. I think that this book really did bring like a really good awareness to this like phenomenon, because like me before reading this book was not the most aware of the Great Garbage Patch, so this did bring awareness to that for me. And another part that I think the book highlights is Indigenous people in countries like Taiwan and how they're treated, and you could really see this in pages 179 to 80. Adlai and Alice, they're really feeling down, and in their own aspects, like Adlai, he's really missing his island, and Alice is really missing his family, but they still find the beauty in each other's like friendship, so they start exchanging language and culture. And one thing that they really exchange that you can see in these pages in particular is Adlai is teaching Alice his language, which is so different than Alice's because it's very like nature-based. And so he teaches her how is the weather at sea today, which is a phrase that is kind of just like how are you or good morning. And they exchange this a lot through this, and I think it's like a really good, beautiful friendship that you can see in these couple pages, and it highlights, I think, like Indigenous people and their differences compared to like people like Taiwan.
And I just think it shows that, like, I mean, this book is a lot about connection as well. It's about the environment. It's about, like, fictional things, obviously, but it really does highlight connection. And I just think it shows that the way we mistreat Indigenous people in real life is quite unnecessary. And, like, they're just people just like all of us. And the way we are kind of destroying their environment by dumping trash quite literally onto their land and having a complete disregard for their area that they live in is just, it's awful. It's unnecessary.
Throughout our class, it kind of was a slap in the face to me too, to like learn about how many people just disregard Indigenous people's rights and don't even think twice about it. Mm-hmm. And we learned that such a large like population of each Asian country comes from Indigenous people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they're just completely disregarded.
I was also thinking about kind of what you were saying about like the connection between Adlai and Alice, and I was thinking about how when they were hiking up the mountain kind of towards like the end of the book, and they were sitting down and Adlai was talking about Kabang, their word for God, and how he's saying that God is usually found like in the mountains and God is obviously around them, and then it goes back to the man with the compound eyes and this otherworldly being that's kind of just like watching and making comments, I guess, from his interactions with Thomas. But I thought that the Indigenous like strong beliefs in spirit and reincarnation and how it kind of pulled back to now this modern world, and there's a possibility of the spirit and then going back into all the sperm whales and seeing reincarnation. I thought that just this theme of spirituality throughout the book and interweaving between both worlds was really interesting.
I mentioned connections before and how like it wasn't only between two people, it also was between a person and an animal, like when Alice finds the cat, and I thought their connection was really sweet because she was going through a very hard time. She was feeling suicidal, and the cat helped her through that, which I think was just very endearing.
Yeah. I also thought that I just loved that the cat was something that could like bring her back to enjoying life and always was a moment for her to kind of come back. Like when she went into the hospital after jumping out of her house into the ocean, the fact that one of the first things that she was looking for was her cat, and she knew that it would always come back to her. And then it brought her to finding Atile, which was also something where she was like, I feel like she found a reason to live.
Yeah, I think the cat also just is something that she needed to care for and protect, in a way, like helped her move past and get over, or accepting that Toto and Tom were actually gone. Right. Because it was she had something new to care for and protect.
So one thing that was really interesting was how the novel mentioned that as it was tradition from the Weo Island, that the second son of each family is sent out into the ocean. They're not expected to come back. They're expected to die at sea, and they come back as sperm whale.
Well, they ended up there was 365 all male sperm whales, and they were saying that in the book that their ribs were crushed by like the weight of them and how they were all beaten up, and they all beached themselves on this beach in Chile, and a bunch of specialists would try to come and push them back into the water, and they would hop back onto the beach. And simultaneously, their island there was a tsunami from the trash vortex, and the island of Weo got completely submerged and engulfed.
So do you think there's relation between that?
Yeah, so I think that there is a strong connection to like real life phenomena that this happens. So whales will beach themselves in real life if they're stressed or sick or other human-induced factors, but they also have really strong social bonds. So like a whole pod will follow like their leader that is either like sick or for whatever other reason. So if that leader will beach themselves, they'll also beach themselves, and they like if they are trying to be saved, they'll like still try to beach themselves. So I think that this was an intentional choice because their whole island was wiped out. That was kind of like their leader in a way. So like those strong whale social bonds come into play, and I think they were just really distressed and like sad.
Yeah, their purpose was to carry those ritual sacrifices of the other young men out to the sea. As the island got destroyed, there would be no more. They lost their entire purpose and meaning for existence.
So even though it's fictional, it's really symbolic towards how the trash island is destroying the environment, not only the land but also the animals.
Do you think it's also symbolic that these sons would go out into the ocean to sacrifice themselves, and then in order to die again, they would go back on land? And it was saying that it kind of like destroyed that area in Chile because they exploded. So the smell and all the organs everywhere was like ruining the area around them. And their island got completely ruined by what modern society did.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a message.
Really good way to connect the dots. Okay, as we're coming to an end of this podcast, I thought we would just each give our opinions on the book and whether we would recommend it. I don't know if I loved the style of the book. It's kind of hard to get into and stay.
It's definitely hard to follow.
Yeah, engaged. It was hard to stay engaged with.
Yeah, I think that I would recommend it to someone. I think it's a really interesting read. I really like how the multiple perspectives wind into each other and how they flow. I think there were a lot of areas where I was a little bit confused. I like some of the characters. I didn't really understand what their purpose was really served. But I think overall it's a good experience of a read. And it's a fairly easy read too.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. The emotional depth, for me, is what I like the most. It was just like, I think it was just really well written. And even though it got kind of confusing at times because they switched characters so fast, I kind of liked that because I personally felt engaged. I didn't get like bored of the characters at any moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely recommend it, but it was also definitely hard to follow at times because of how much switching of characters there was and all the different narratives, especially even switching just the side characters. But at the end, it feels like it all kind of came together and made sense.
Okay, so I personally don't think I would recommend it because it was kind of hard to follow, and I wasn't the biggest fan of the writing style. I think it did kind of lose the plot in some points, but I still do think it was good to bring ecological awareness to people if they did read it.
Yeah, I think some of the themes were important to keep relevant.
Well, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. And
Bye!